The answer to that is, of course, I played in Norfolk, Virginia, when I went through boot camp down there for the Norfolk team. And I played in Newport, Rhode Island, when I went up there for War College. In fact, I played a little bit, but I formed a schedule for them, got them uniformed, got equipment for the training base at Norfolk, where I was going through War College, where the commanding officer was named Redneck Magruder. He was mad at everybody. And then I went aboard ship and went to North Atlantic, and we played softball in Iceland. Played in Scapa Flow at a British base in the Orkney Islands. We played a lot in the South Pacific, where some of the Seabees had used bulldozers. Of course, Buccaneer was in the Seabees, but he used bulldozers over there in those islands. New Hebrides, also in the Fijis, and Kwajalein, Inuiatak, and all the way across. And the best ballpark we had was in the Ulithi, which is right southwest of Guam, about 500-600 miles. I did play ball. I played catch aboard the battleship Alabama. Played ball almost every evening if conditions permitted. A lot of times, of course, we had to stand by your gun because of the torpedo bombers that always come in about dusk to try to get to the carriers, and we had to do our job. I did play a lot of catch aboard the battleship Alabama.
Well, it must have been pretty intimidating for your average ordinary seaman who's playing on a team, whether it's pickup or not, to come up against you on the mound.
Bob, on that point, didn't you tell me that even today there are still dozens of white baseballs bobbing up and down in the Pacific Ocean?
We wonder once in a while the ship would roll or pitch, and I'd miss the catcher and the ball would go overboard.
Yeah, right.
There's probably a few of those balls on those beaches and so lovely islands like Peleliu and Tarawa, and you name all the islands out there, Ponape, and you name them all. But some of them I don't ever want to see again. But
I can believe
we did the Marianas, and we did the Philippines, and when took MacArthur back where he wanted to go. I'm no hero. The heroes didn't come back. We know that. 405,000 of them.
That's right.
It's a very honor for me to be in the Navy. I enjoyed my. I don't say I enjoyed it, but I'm very proud of my military career, like all these men here that were in the military. We're proud of the fact that we had the honor and the opportunity to serve our country. And I just hope that the young people nowadays learn history. And right now, at this particular date and time, with the World War II Memorial being dedicated and groundbreaking, I think this is a great thing for this nation to. Because you've got the World War II, the Vietnam Memorial, we got the Korean Memorial, now we got the World War II Memorial, and it's going to be a great help for the future of this nation.
Bert Shepard, let me come back to you a minute, because we got the story of what happened after you came back, and how you went on to pitch in the major leagues after that, and after being wounded the way you were. But we didn't get the story of how you got in the first place, and how you got into the cockpit of a plane that eventually got shot down.
Well, I took the Air Force exam. You had to have 2 years of college, but I didn't have that. So I took a spatial exam, which was equal to that. So I got called into cadets and was fortunate enough to graduate and fly a P-38. But an interesting thing, when I was in prison camp, every time a new prisoner came in, everybody'd rush up, say he's from New York. How are the Yankees doing? How's Brooklyn doing? It's amazing the interest baseball had in prison camp. That was the first thing they'd ask them. How's their favorite team doing? Mm-hmm. So that was rather interesting.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about the incident itself.
Well, I was over there flying around. I wasn't bothering anybody, but I saw a column of smoke up ahead, and they said there's some airplanes on there. I said, well, I might as well make a pass on the way back to England. And I was about 2 miles from it, and I must have flown right over the gun emplacement, because they must have shot up and shot the right foot off. So I called the colonel and told him I had a leg shot off. I'd call him back later. But, well, hell. So there's no pain or anything. It's just a little numb. And so in the meanwhile, I get hit in the chin. And that knocked me unconscious. A lot of people accuse me of still being unconscious. But no, technically the doctors say that I'm okay. So then I crashed in the airplane unconscious. Hit her kabang. So a German, a Vienna doctor from Austria was in the German Luftwaffe, and he was called to come over to take me to the hospital. And he had to chase the farmers away with their pitchforks because they were going to do me in. And he had a pistol with him, so he chased them away. Well, the local hospital wasn't going to take me because I had a Terrorflieger. So there's a lot of fighter aircraft strafed German, a bunch of civilians, and that's a pretty dirty thing. So he called a high command in Berlin, and they called the Ludwigshus Hospital and said, "You take him. You're responsible." So he took me in there, and I woke up a couple of weeks later, and he had already left, and I didn't know who had brought me to the hospital until about 50 years later.
Is that right?
And I was able to fly over to Parndorf, Austria, and visit with him as the greatest thing that could ever happen to me. Because that had been bothering me. Well, I'm getting a little old, and I might kick the bucket one of these days, so I was anxious to see him. A great thrill. And when I got ready to leave, he put his arms around me and squeezed real hard. And I had the feeling those were the same arms that picked me up out of that cockpit, and I broke down something awful. It was, I didn't expect to, but by God I did.
That's a wonderful tale. Buck, when you were in the Seabees and out in the Pacific, you had left a situation where you were playing in the Negro League, couldn't play in the major leagues. The barrier hadn't been broken yet. But what was it like for you in the Seabees in that regard?
Well, one thing about it is still segregation in the CBs.
Right.
Segregation in the CBs. We were in an all-black battalion, but all the officers, they were white. They were white, and some of the things that would happen is, I know we went to take some ammunition to a destroyer, and we down here in this LST, we sending the ammunition up, and it started blowing taps, and the little ensign on the deck said, "Attention, niggers." And when he said that, I went up that ladder. I said, "You know what you're saying?" Say, "I am a Navy man. I just happen to be black. See, I'm fighting for the same thing you fighting for." Then they called the captain, and the captain blessed him out. And one thing about it is, when he really started thinking about it, is he started crying. He was from Alabama. He started crying. I said, "Don't cry. Just don't do it no more."
Good for you.
Well, I sat in the back of the bus today. I didn't know any difference back there.
Gene, there's one quick story that shows you how America felt toward these men and the other athletes like them, and indeed about all returning GIs after the war. Buddy Lewis of the Washington Senators was coming to bat for the first time in Chicago in 1945 toward the end of the season. He had just gotten out of the Air Corps, and he was facing Earl Caldwell of the White Sox, and Caldwell threw 2 pitches to Buddy Lewis, who was an all-star for the Senators before the war, third baseman and outfielder. And Bill McGowan was working behind home plate, one of the great and very authoritarian umpires. Called both the pitches balls, and Earl Caldwell stepped off the mound and hollered into the plate and to McGowan and said, "Bill, what's going on back there? Both those pitches are right down Broadway." And McGowan took his mask off and stepped out from behind the catcher, and he said, "Earl, this is Buddy Lewis. He's been gone from baseball for 4 years, since before Pearl Harbor. He flew the hump over the Himalaya Mountains over 300 times, and there's no way you're going to throw a strike." And Buddy Lewis walked on 4 pitches. And that's how all America felt about these men and their colleagues when they came home.
Well, I was about
Buddy
to
Lewis,
go ahead.
and